On 7.3, Councillor Merulla, you have a motion?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's moved by myself, seconded by yourself. And it's reaffirming the acceptance of the $1 billion investment in infrastructure and public transit investment from the province of Ontario. Whereas the province of Ontario in May of 2015 announced $1 billion in funding for Hamilton B-Line light rail transit project, which begins the implementation of the City of Hamilton's rapid transit strategy. Whereas the provincial funding covers absolutely every single penny associated with the capital cost of the LRT project, which includes investments to renew critical city infrastructure such as sidewalks, roads, water, sewer lines along the LRT corridor, and by extension opens up or frees funding for the Mountain, Stony Creek, Ancaster, accordingly as a result of the savings to the general levy, whereas the City of Hamilton has already entered into a memorandum of agreement with Metrolinx. Again, we've already entered an actual agreement with Metrolinx, signaling the city's intent to work collaboratively, that means together.
Okay, so we're not
based on an
you're
understanding
reading the motion right now, right?
With Metrolinx to fully implement, we're in implementation stage of the LRT project, and whereas it is acknowledged that the LRT project is one part of the City of Hamilton's broader transit strategy as outlined in the city's Rapid Ready report and 10-year transit strategy. Therefore, be it resolved that Hamilton City Council reaffirm the acceptance of the $1 billion investment in infrastructure and public transit that the province of Ontario has provided for the express purpose, the sole purpose of completing the LRT project and associated roads, sidewalks, sewers, and other related infrastructure projects. So, Mr. Mayor.
Did you want to speak to this item?
Absolutely.
Oh, I thought you might.
More than you think. I have a couple of questions, though, first, if I can, to Mike Zagaric. Mike, just quickly, off the top of your head, and I'm sorry that I didn't ask you prior, how much have we spent to date with respect to the LRT project since 2008, prior to actually asking the province for the $1 billion? So prior to the $1 billion being given to us, how much have we spent to date on $3 billion allocation and post $1 billion?
Up to and prior to the announcement.
Right.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, in the range of $5 to $6 million, of which some of that funding would have been provincial funding that the city received.
Right. Right. So $5 million taxpayers' money would be a fair number to conclude?
Yeah. So through you, Mr. Mayor, $5 to $6 million of provincial and local tax.
Okay. And how many votes do you, Mr. Mayor, have we had on LRT from 2008 to today? Perhaps I should
I'll go to the clerk on that one. Do you have a...
When was the first vote, and how many votes have we had on LRT with respect to the acceptance of the project or directing the province to fund the project?
Mayor, through you, I'm not exactly positive, but at least 3. Oh.
Okay.
Just off the top of her, to be fair, that it's a guesstimate. We'll hold her to
so
that.
We've had 3 votes. That we're now gone beyond debating the actual merits of the program, and we're actually in the implementation stage because as the Treasury, as Metrolinx indicated the other day, the Treasury has earmarked $1 billion. It's sitting in the bank with City of Hamilton's name on it to be allocated to the City of Hamilton. Is that correct through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Zagaric?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, the commitment, the $1 billion commitment is part of the funding commitment made by the province as it relates to the GTHA transit or transportation investment. So it is a $1 billion commitment.
Exactly. And as we were told at the LRT subcommittee, the Treasury has already earmarked it. It's sitting there. It's just ready for us to spend it once we get over the implementation design issues. So through you, Mr. Mayor, just for confirmation purposes, and for today's debate, can we please have that confirmation?
Mike?
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor. I didn't hear the question.
Okay,
Did
well,
I get the question
Metrolinx at the LRT subcommittee stated clearly that the Treasury has already put the money for the City of Hamilton. It's waiting, it's earmarked, it's there for us to spend at the appropriate time once we get over our issues of the implementation and design aspects. For the sake of this debate, I just need confirmation of what the Metrolinx had stated publicly the other day and your understanding of that.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, the province has made a commitment in terms of the $1 billion. It forms part of their GTHA funding commitment. Point of clarification, it is the $1 billion commitment is not necessarily for the city to spend. It is a commitment toward the LRT project, a Metrolinx project, so just a point of clarification in terms of the spend.
And he made that point as well.
It sits with Metrolinx.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Metrolinx did make that point as well when I mentioned that. So it's there, it's ready for Metrolinx to spend on our behalf. Okay. So now that we've gone through the votes on the merits of the project, and I have had over 20 public meetings on that. We voted. We have the money sitting there for Metrolinx and for us to spend accordingly. And can I have an understanding? I know that in speaking with Metrolinx and Paul Johnson, that this money is not earmarked simply for that train, but all the associated infrastructure. Can you just elaborate on that component to you, Mr. Mayor?
Paul Johnson is here. Maybe Paul's the right guy to answer because he's working closely, as you know, with Metrolinx on our behalf on the LRT project. Paul Johnson.
So through you, Mr. Mayor. The costs associated with LRT are laid out in our memorandum of agreement. It does include, of course, the project costs related to the track and the cars and the train, as you point out. But it is also those pieces that enable this to happen, and those are the infrastructure pieces. So this is a major public works initiative. There are relocations and work that has to happen on underground utilities, both the city-owned utilities and our partner utility organizations. And then, of course, putting it all back together, roads and sidewalks that accompany the corridor. So those infrastructure pieces, as has been laid out, will be replaced like for like. If there are incremental increases or upgrades that we wish to make, those would be city expenses, and the city would direct that work to be done as part of the project, and then we would be responsible for those costs.
Now, in looking at that corridor, how much of that, so for every dollar we save in upgrading that infrastructure, roads, sewers, and sidewalks, would obviously free up the deficit component on the other hand, and that $3 billion deficit and the compounding $200 million infrastructure deficit. When you drive through the mountain or other areas, I see some of those roads that are devastating. And so we can expedite the construction of those roads and all those efficiencies quicker with that $1 billion, relieving the pressure. Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Sounds like a Mike Skerrick answer to me. So, Mike?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, in terms of any oversizing or local projects that would be invested in conjunction with the LRT, we would look at the possible funding capacity for those projects. So recognizing the fact that any projects that are related to growth, we have a revenue source through development charges that would help to contribute towards the funding of those projects. I just want to caution Council in terms of our current 10-year capital budgets is in terms of the commitments going forward, we would have to review any additional projects over and above what's already been presented to Council in our 10-year plan.
So our point is we need to focus, and I'm working with Paul Johnson and Metrolinx, in isolating those tens of millions of dollars of infrastructure, roads, sewers, and sidewalks, and how much of that was already budgeted, and how much of it would be absorbed by the funding from the province, and that significant amount of money would then relieve pressure, once determined, from the general levy impact. That's really the crux of my argument, and we'll get to the bottom of that once the information is forthcoming. Now, the HSR branding. How much are we spending through you, Mr. Mayor, to the HSR branding issue that's been proposed?
Mr. Mayor. Thought it was in the order of $500,000, but we can get that confirmed.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe it was $460,000.
$460,000.
Okay.
Councillor?
No, just curious, because this in itself, from the cultural shift of this project, would have massive branding issues in itself, where public transit would become more of a choice as opposed to a necessity, which it presently is. So I think that's kind of wasted money, but I'll deal with that later. Now, if I can go away from the questions, then can I have my statement now?
You bet.
Mr. Mayor, what we have before us really is a situation of inconsistency, unpredictability, and chaos. People can't commit to what already we've committed to. It is a frightening state of affairs of voting based on false pretense and communicating to our public accordingly. I have, since 2008, conducted nearly 25 public meetings. I've cordially communicated. Those of us that are on the line, from City Motor to McMaster, and now going down to the GO station, have a direct impact. And as a direct result, I was very proactive in communicating what this all meant. To now, in any way, from an obstructionist standpoint, try to impede the progress that we've made to this point. Although the line is already, all we understand of it is 10%, we're at the implementation stage here, folks. We're not debating the merits of the project. And if I can draw attention to what we went through with the expressway, now, understanding that I supported that expressway, and understanding that we were coining opponents to that expressway as obstructionists, but nobody went as far as what's going on, or what I've heard, or at least what people have indicated to me, that there might be a referral to actually commit to what we've already committed to, of $1 billion sitting there to be spent for LRT, which then concludes, in my eyes, that people are soft on this particular project. If that's the case, then come out of the closet, folks. If that's really the case, then come out of the closet, admit that you've deceived this public, you've deceived the residents of the city, that you really didn't mean it when you voted for it, and now suddenly you've had a change of heart. You don't want that $1 billion. But we are... There's $1 billion of capital expenditure, and this project, if you want to talk about the merits of this project, I will do so, but it's really about the integrity of the process and the integrity of each and every one of us in voting based on purpose and objective, to only then change your mind because you got weak-kneed and lack balls. And I tell you, and that, Mr. Mayor, is something that I personally am offended by. Because whether you love me or hate me, I can assure you that when I say something, I mean it. I don't think a lot of people around this table can say the same anymore. And for that, I say shame.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Partridge.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I want to thank Councillor Merulla for bringing this motion forward. But I would also like to move a motion to refer this item. Whether I can do it now or whether you want to go through your speakers list, I'll leave that up to you, sir.
Well, no, I'm going to leave that up to you. I have a speakers list of Collins, Green, and Johnson at this point, so it's your privilege. You're first on the speakers list, so you can either decide to move forward on it or defer.
Yeah, no, I'm going to move forward on it then. So it is moved by myself and is seconded by Councillor Maria Pearson to refer item 7.3 to the May 18th, 2016 meeting of the General Issues Committee following consideration of the LRT Subcommittee Report 16-003, and that a presentation be made by LRT staff at the GIC Committee.
Okay, thank you. So that's a referral motion, not debatable. Did I hear directions in there? Just one second. Yeah.
Standing recorded vote.
Were there directions in there beyond just the referral?
It is for a presentation from
For a
staff.
presentation?
Yes.
Okay, so the referral motion is not debatable. The directions are. So if anyone wants to debate the directions, you can. If not, we can vote on this issue right here and now. On the directions.
A friendly amendment or addition, if we can include the already near unanimously approved LRT subcommittee reports to date as that presentation. Can we get that in the motion that we all approved?
Okay, so that's a request for an amendment on this motion? Okay. Okay, so I'm going to actually, I don't know if we can go to amendments. Our referral motion is not debatable. I don't think we do amendments on the referral, so we have to decide on the referral. Just stick with me. We decide on the referral, and if we don't have the referral, then we can get into other motions or other debates. Madam Clerk?
Mr. Mayor, it is amendable.
It is amendable.
Yes.
Okay. It was moved and seconded that. Add it again. Give it to me one more time.
We had all reports to date that have been near unanimously, minus one. We've been unanimously receiving LRT subcommittee reports, and we can include that.
That all that be included. Okay. So that's an amendment. Want to vote on that amendment? All in favor? On this amendment? Councillor Whitehead.
I asked through the clerk, it's my understanding when that report comes forward, the LRT subcommittee's reports automatically go to the GIC. Is that correct? So this is a redundant motion and it is gamemanship, but the reality is that all that information will be contained in the report and presentation to the GIC committee. I just wanted to let sort of the audience know that it is redundant.
Okay. Thank you. All in favor? Any opposed? Hearing none? Okay. Any other further comments or amendments? You have a speakers list. You're going to move your motion. Motion to refer is duly put. All in favor of deferring this motion to a future meeting?
Those in favor of referring? Councillor Whitehead, Councillor Skelly, Councillor Jackson, Councillor Collins, Councillor Conley, Councillor Pearson, Councillor Brenda Johnson, Councillor Pasuta, and Councillor Partridge.
And those opposed?
Mayor Eisenberger, Councillor Merulla, Councillor Green, Councillor Farr, Councillor Aidan Johnson, and Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you.
I just say mission accomplished. Thank you.
Very much. I'm assuming that's pass. To
That carries,
confirm.
Mr.
Thank you. Motion's referred.